Statistical, mathematical fact
never has been down.
has broken every single record. There is no asset that has come close.
It's the only thing in the industry that was not touched, that was not hacked, and it never fails doing what it promised in 2009. It's never
What's
failed.
the best performing asset the world has ever seen? And you'll find out that it's Bitcoin.
Welcome followers, welcome supporters, welcome subscribers, welcome haters, welcome Bitcoin negators. All right, everyone's welcome here. Welcome to another live space with Oliver Velez. Of course, my name is Oliver Velez, and we're going to talk Bitcoin today. Our favorite topic, that's right. So come on in, make yourselves comfortable. Grab the beverage of your choice. I've got some electrolytes here. Maybe even grab something to take notes with. You know, I like to do that with these sessions. All right, I hope you're enjoying the discount that Bitcoin is presenting us during the month of September. All right, September, as we know from an historical point of view, is a rather soft month, but not just for Bitcoin, for all markets around the globe, basically. I have been playing the September negative tendency for almost 40 years now. And it's one of the things that I actually teach my traders. I make sure that all of my traders are very familiar with the various cycles that tend to, for a variety of reasons, tend to be quite repetitive and reliable. And September, being a soft month, is consistently reliable. Now, nothing is 100%, of course, but throughout most decades, the majority of the years inside of every decade, September is one of, if not the softest month of the year, and the most consistently predictable soft month of the year, which is very important. So I've been playing that dynamic for almost 4 decades. And there are a variety of reasons which I think are beyond the scope of our talk here today about Bitcoin's two markets. But there's some very valid reasons why September is the historically one of the softest months of the year. Now, what I will say is that softness in September, which statistically happens more reliable than any other month throughout the year, does set up the most bullish period of the year. And that is also universally true for all markets. And that is the latter part of the year. Late October into the end of the year is one of, if not the most bullish period for markets all over the world, irrespective of the item that they focus on or trade. Bitcoin is no different. If you were to go back over the history, the annual history, the history of Bitcoin year by year, you'll find that the latter part of the year is one of the most powerful as far as number go up periods of the entire year. What partially sets that up is the dip that statistically happens in September. You know, a lot of people who are not familiar with markets don't understand that downside is necessary oftentimes for more thorough upside. If a market takes off to the upside without first experiencing a decline, that upside movement will statistically be less potent and have a shorter duration compared to the markets that take off to the upside, but take off to the upside after having first a sell-off. And there's a very good reason for this. There's a very good reason that the moves to the upside are more powerful if they precede a drop than if they don't precede a drop. One of the main reasons is because the drop accomplishes a cleanup, a wiping out of tourists, an elimination of weak hands. And so what's left in the market are your true convicted players who will not let go of the asset for anything. And so when a market is purified, for lack of a better word, of all the cobwebs, all the junk, all the dirt, all the leeches, all the hangers on, the non-believers that just want a quick pop, when the market eliminates them, It is light and it is free of the debris, if you will, that kept it lethargic. And that cleanup, boom, frees the market to then skyrocket. And so markets that take off after they have first dropped and hurt people, those markets are far more ferocious. They're far more violent in their potency to the upside than markets that didn't have that cleanup period first. September signifies statistically the biggest cleanup month of the year, which is why it actually precedes the most bullish part of the year, late October into the end of the year. And that bullishness often spills over into the beginning of the following year, especially as it relates to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's bullish period really is from late October into February, March of the next year. That sweet spot of the cycle is very, very potent. And I believe that this year, that period in Bitcoin's cycle, that late October into January, February, I think it's going to freaking melt faces. All right. I believe so. So we'll see if I'm correct or not. Anyway, I see 240 people. I don't see a single comment. Now, I know that I am still not able to see everyone's comments. I have no idea. I've given up on trying to find a solution to why, or reason as to why I only see certain people's comments on my platform and others I don't. When I go, the reason why I know this is because when I go back and maybe watch, spot check the recorded version, I see the comments that I never saw when I was live. And so I do know that there's a plethora of comments that come through that I'm just not able to see. And I don't know why. And I've given up on trying to figure this out. All right, just don't know. All right. But I can see some comments. I see them coming through now. Like Carl is saying, I hear you, brother. All right. And Chi says, I'm shy. You don't have to be shy. All right. Checking comments. Test 1, 2, 3. Awesome. All right, guys. So good. At least I know that some people are here, alive, kicking, and well. All right. So without any further ado, let's talk about my topic today. What spurred this idea to come to you live today regarding this topic was a personal, what spurred it is a personal experience of mine that's been going on for a bit here, especially over the last few days. Bitcoin, I believe that a lot of people are relatively new to the Bitcoin space, and that's a good thing. Okay, and we should welcome new people to the space. I actually consider myself relatively new as well. I just came in. Well, I made my first purchase in 2020. I started studying Bitcoin in 2018, but I made my first plunge after studying quite thoroughly in March of 2020. So I sort of have two starts. I have a start of beginning to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and realizing that this is something unique and different. Let me investigate more. 2018, toward the end of 2018, actually. And a second start where I actually committed to the asset itself, to the money itself, to this miracle itself. All right. And that was March of 2020. I got my opportunity. But with all that being said, I still believe that even some people who are not relatively new have sort of lost the notion that Bitcoin really operates in two markets. Bitcoin truly lives today in two markets. This may not be the case in the future. It wasn't the case in Bitcoin's early days. It lived in one market. Today, Bitcoin lives in two markets. There are two markets for Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about them today. All right. Now, It's very simple what these two markets are. One market is what we loosely refer to as the KYC Bitcoin market. KYC, which stands for Know Your Customer Bitcoin. In the beginning of Bitcoin's life, there were no exchanges. There was no attempt to regulate Bitcoin. Bitcoin was became a self-contained market within itself without exchanges and other organizations getting in between your market participants. It was truly peer-to-peer. Okay? It's a peer-to-peer market. Later, exchanges started to come into being, like Mt. Gox, and then later Kraken and Coinbase, and you know the story. Many of these firms had to eventually move to a requirement where, in order to conduct business on that exchange, you have to give up your identity. So they have to know who you are, your name, your address, your email, your telephone number, your social security number if you're an American, a government ID, your address, the whole 9 yards. This is called KYC Bitcoin. And most exchanges today, even throughout the world, KYC is spread to most, not all, but most exchanges require that they know whom they're dealing with. Now, what this does is it assigns an identity to the Bitcoin that is purchased. So if you are a client or customer of Swan or Kraken or Coinbase or what have you, and you purchase Bitcoin, there is a link between you and the Bitcoin that was purchased. Now, no one may not be paying attention to it at the moment, but if there arose a reason to connect an identity to that Bitcoin, it can be done. You purchased it under your account and they know everything about you. What's more is that this Bitcoin can be tracked now, because Bitcoin's an open protocol, forever. Forever. Do you understand? So it can be forever associated with you. Now, that's KYC Bitcoin. That's one market. The other market was how Bitcoin really came into existence as a pure peer-to-peer network, where there is no KYC. There is no exchange. There is no real company in between us. There's you and me, or there's one Bitcoin address and another Bitcoin address, and they're dealing with each other. This is the freer market, the purer market, and we loosely refer to that market as non-KYC Bitcoin, where there is no specific identity associated with the moving of that Bitcoin. So there is no name attached to the transaction. There is no address, email, phone number, passport, government ID, whatever. There's nothing. There's just an address, transacting with another address. That's it. A receiver and a sender with no identity whatsoever associated with that transaction. Now, a lot of people ask me, what is the desired type? And this can somewhat largely depend on where you are and who you are and what country you're from. I do want you to understand that non-KYC, or Bitcoin that is not associated with your identity, is not illegal in most parts of the world. There is nothing that makes non-KYC Bitcoin illegal. So I say that because of what I'm about to tell you. I believe that every single one of you needs to have both. You need to participate in both of the Bitcoin markets. These markets are very, very different from each other. They are different as far as price. They're different as far as liquidity. They're different as far as availability. They're different as far as spread. And they're different as far as value. All right. And you need to play in both markets, especially if you're American. You see, I believe it's a mistake to be totally non-KYC Bitcoin because that just raises flags. Why are you don't have any KYC Bitcoin? I think that there's going to be in the future a lot of services that are built on top of KYC Bitcoin that you might want to take advantage of, like borrowing against your Bitcoin, buying a home without cash down, but using KYC locked, time locked Bitcoin as your collateral, things of this nature. Most of those financial services that are going to be offered by banks all over the world and other financial organizations throughout the world, and exchanges that offer finance finance divisions that do require KYC. Most of those services will never be, most of them won't be able to be conducted on non-KYC Bitcoin. They'll have to be conducted in large part, not in large part, on KYC Bitcoin. So you may want KYC Bitcoin just for that. I say you need KYC Bitcoin because it's just weird if you don't have it. And I believe it's going to become more weird in the future if you don't have KYC Bitcoin. So I think that you should have KYC Bitcoin. I also think that you should have another stash, non-KYC Bitcoin. And you should actually consciously grow both of these stacks. Let's go over why non-KYC Bitcoin as a market is very different from the KYC Bitcoin. And sometimes they can be almost diametrically opposed to each other. Let's go over some of those things. The first thing I want you to understand is that when it comes to non-KYC Bitcoin, Bitcoin that is not attached to anyone's identity, all right? This Bitcoin, the non-KYC world, is the real price of Bitcoin. Understand me carefully. When you look in the non-KYC market for Bitcoin, what you will notice is that Bitcoin is much higher in cost than buying Bitcoin on Coinbase or Kraken or another centralized exchange, right? So you can have two choices. I can get non-KY Bitcoin here, but I can get Coinbase Bitcoin here, the same Bitcoin, the same amount of Bitcoin. And so most people opt for the non-KYC Bitcoin, the KYC Bitcoin, because it's cheaper. But I want you to look at it like this. Non-KYC Bitcoin is the true price of Bitcoin. The Coinbase price, the Kraken price, the KYC price of Bitcoin is the discounted price of Bitcoin. These exchanges are paying you for your information, and they're paying you by cutting the price, giving you a discount. The regular price for Bitcoin is non-KYC. Whatever the lowest bid is, the lowest offer is, that's the price, the real price. The real market's price is the non-KYC price. The corporate price, let's use that term, the corporate price to completely own everything about you. They pay you for that in the form of this discount. And so what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is your non-KYC Bitcoin will always be worth more than your KYC Bitcoin. Always. The same way in a market where dollars are not really legal, Venezuela, Argentina. In the black market, dollars go for much higher price than dollars at the bank, right? And so it's the same with Bitcoin. The freer market, non KYC, the freer, more real market fetches a higher price. You should have a stack that fetches the higher price. You should also have a stack that is KYC, especially if you're interested in the future in taking advantage of the many layers that are the many layers to help financialize Bitcoin. If you're looking for those services, then right now, I'd say you need some KYC Bitcoin as well. Now, the purist will completely disagree with me. I know this. The pure Bitcoiner will say, no, Oliver. The only real Bitcoin is non KYC. And I get where they're coming from. It's just that we don't really live in that world yet. I think it's still safer. I think we're going to morph into that world. But I think it's safer to have both. All right. So I'm a bit more pragmatic when it comes to that. In addition to that, the majority of people who do speak this way, they don't really have a lot of resources. The majority of people who will tell you no KYC Bitcoin, they don't really have a lot. They don't have a lot of anything. When you start to go up that wealth totem pole, if you will, you'll understand that we still live. You'll have to understand that we still live. That world is starting to show its cracks, but we still live in that world. And when you have sizable resources, you can only basically take one foot out for the most part. You can't take both foot out. You know, it's just too substantial right now. That's my view. All right. So, what spurred me to want to talk to you tonight about these two markets, the KYC Bitcoin market and the non KYC? It's because of my personal experience operating in both. Today, people, I can't get non KYC Bitcoin in any sufficient amounts. For the first time in a long time, I can't. It's not freaking available. But I can go on Coinbase and buy $50,000, $100,000 worth of Bitcoin like that. That's interesting, right? I could never do that today. I can't do that in the non-KYC Bitcoin world. It's not there. It's not available. No one is willing to sell that. But in the KYC world, in the Coinbases, in the Krakens of the world, I can get it just like that. What is that about? Now, some people are going to say, well, Oliver, that's paper Bitcoin. It's available always because there's a certain small amount that's paper Bitcoin and they're just giving it to you. And that, I wouldn't say that's a zero possibility. I wouldn't. I don't think it's rampant now. It was at one point in 2021, but I don't think it's rampant, but I wouldn't go as far as saying I don't think it exists. And I do think that to a certain extent, some small measure of paper Bitcoin, fractionalized Bitcoin will exist. Small, though, with Bitcoin, because it's very dangerous to do it beyond small, right? Very dangerous. And Bitcoin makes you pay the price. Everyone who has fucked around with Bitcoin, with paper and fractionalization, all of them, 100%, they're either dead or in jail. That's it. Every single one. Bitcoin has been alive for going on 15 years now. And every single organization, every single individual who's ever tried to fuck with Bitcoin like that, they're dead or in jail. It's a 100% failure rate. So I know that if someone gets overzealous in that category, their ultimate resting place will be that cemetery or prison. Bitcoin does it 100% of the time. So I wouldn't be so overly concerned with that. I think it's an overblown thing. There's paper Bitcoin and they're manipulating and this and that. No, bullshit. It's a global market. That's very dangerous, guys. Very dangerous to play like that in a global market. And it's very dangerous to play like that when self-custody can happen just like that and leave you exposed, how naked you are exposed. Like that, it can happen. You see, the reason why it was possible to paper gold is because it's so fucking slow. It took me months to sell. I'd accumulated gold over several decades. But it took me months to sell my gold, months to sell my physical gold, months. That amount that I sold would have taken me 2 seconds in Bitcoin. Because most people never moved gold, they moved the notes that represented the gold, but the gold stayed stationary. Even upon a change of ownership, there was just the change of ownership of the piece of paper. The gold never moved. They just supposedly put a different person's name on it. Oh, that's not Mr. Johnson's gold anymore. Oh, no, that's Mr. Patrick's gold now. All right, well, let's change the sign over there. All right, just scrub that Johnson off. Yeah, you missed the S. Take the S off too. Got it all clean? Yeah, put Patrick on there now. The gold would stay stationary decade after decade after decade after decade. Just the paper would change. Because of this, it was safe to paper gold. It just never moved. But Bitcoin moved like that. It's a very dangerous game to play, to become naked with Bitcoin, and something in the world happens and now 90% can ask for their Bitcoin like that. Boom. 90%. Oh my goodness. 0 time. A big giant central bank blows up. Everybody's going to say, give me my Bitcoin. And that will collapse anybody who's naked. Happened to FTX. It happened to Celsius. It happened to all of them. Right? Exposed how naked they were. And so it's a very dangerous game. Another thing that makes paper Bitcoin very dangerous is because the market's not controlled. You see, gold's market has been co-opted. It's basically gold is basically accumulated outside of countries. It's basically accumulated in 4 places around the world. It's big giant vaults in four key places around the world. That's the majority of gold. And then governments. 4 custodians and governments. Co-opted. They control the market. Understand? They can collude and control the market. You can't do that with Bitcoin. There is no control of the market. Nobody's running Bitcoin. There's no human being that's starting it and stopping it. Oh, it's time for the halving now. Are we ready? This is the only market, the only network that is not run by human beings. In fact, it's the only market, the only network, the only protocol that pays human beings to work for it. Imagine the NASDAQ saying, hiring human beings, that's Bitcoin. Bitcoin says hiring human beings. I'll pay you every 10 minutes. This is my pay every 10 minutes. Any human being can get employed. It's the only market, and it's global, all over the world. No one can stop it. No one can halt it. No one can put a circuit breaker on it to protect some of the big guys that have been exposed as being naked. It's a very freaking dangerous game when you play paper games with Bitcoin. The odds are against you. Will they be some small measure? Probably, but nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. And if that were to ever happen, Bitcoin's going to come to the rescue and squash their asses. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You truly proved the work, Oliver. Your reward shall be great. I really appreciate that, Chip. Thank you. From your fingertips to God's eyeballs. All right. All right, guys. So yes, in a crisis, a global crisis, that spread between non-KYC Bitcoin and KYC Bitcoin, that can blow out. There can be a scenario, guys, where your non-KYC Bitcoin is 40% higher than KYC Bitcoin because more people want the Bitcoin that's not attached to any real personality, any real identity. It's a cleaner, purer Bitcoin. Now, I know some people might feel, well, Oliver, doesn't that break down the characteristic of fungibility? In a way, it does. Now, I don't think this is a permanent state for Bitcoin, but as long as we have a non-KYC Bitcoin market and a KYC Bitcoin market, it's the KYC Bitcoin market that has interrupted the real market. The non-KYC is the real market. So as long as we have this interruption by the KYC market, the fungibility is not pure. You understand? The fungibility characteristic is not pure for Bitcoin, but that's okay. It's temporary because I do believe that KYC Bitcoin ultimately potentially could become a thing of the past in the future. Now, I know some people think exactly the opposite. No, Oliver, they're going to lock down more, maybe initially, but I'm hopeful of this. I think in the future, the incentives are so powerful that no one is going to want KYC Bitcoin. You understand that the world is ultimately going to come to Bitcoin, and that means that the world is ultimately going to be singularly aligned with the same incentives. The same way you and I would rather Bitcoin not be attached to our personality, our identity. The people coming to Bitcoin are going to have the same feeling. Whether that person's a politician, whether that person's a big giant CEO of a Fortune 100 company. I mean, everyone that comes eventually feels, thinks, and believes the same way. And if the world is coming to Bitcoin, and the world is, the same way the world came to the number zero, the same way the world came to electricity, the same way the world eventually came to fire, the same way the world eventually came to the wheel, the same way the world eventually came to cars and airplanes and televisions and radio and personal computers and cell phones and the internet, the world is coming to Bitcoin. And that world will have the same incentives. So that is why I believe in the future, as more and more people adopt Bitcoin, the incentives will align to eliminate a lot of these things. All right. And so that is why I believe that ultimately this is just a temporary period in Bitcoin's in Bitcoin's eternal life, if you will. Yeah, I do believe that Bitcoin potentially can be eternal, like fire is eternal. Electricity is eternal. Energy is eternal. But Bitcoin is basically energy. It's eternal. All right. We're assigning a value to work. Human value is eternal. Like, there's not going to be a point at which human value gets turned off. So Bitcoin is human work value tied to, so human value is never going away, eternal. So energy is never going away, eternal. And Bitcoin is human value, proof of work, being combined with physical energy. Both things are eternal, which for the most part means that Bitcoin's eternal. You understand? So we're early in that eternity. We're very early in that eternity. It's crazy. I have to work on my non-KYC stack. Alan, I'm glad you mentioned that, because yes, if you haven't, you have to start beefing up that non-KYC stack, guys, if you haven't done so. And it doesn't have to necessarily be equal either, but you do need 2 stacks. Now, one of the more, this public forum is not the forum to go over this in detail, and I won't. I'll do some broad strokes. I do this with my Bitcoiners, but we do deep dives into this. But I will give you some broad strokes. Probably one of the most popular ways that people acquire non-KYC Bitcoin is through the decentralized exchange called BISC, B-I-S-Q. Now, I think I can show you this if I can. Let me give you a second. Let me show you for a second here. Can I show you this? Yeah, I can. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Let me just show you this so you can just be, why is this frozen? Oh, here it is. All right. So, right here, okay? BISQ, decentralized exchange. Before using this, if you want, I strongly encourage that you get very familiar with BTC Sessions on YouTube. Go to his YouTube channel, BTC Sessions. Let me just show you that. I think that's very important as well. Shout out to BTC Sessions. He's the man. I can't tell you how much this dude has helped me, right? I actually wish I could put both of these things up in this platform, but I can't. But anyway, yeah, BTC Sessions. Shout out to BTC Sessions. This is the channel you definitely need to make one of your favorite channels. Anything Bitcoin security, anything Bitcoin cold storage, wallet, non-KYC, KYC, multi-sig, single sig, anything like that. This is your go-to. All right. So before you even delve into BISC exchange, you're going to watch BISC oriented videos on BTC Sessions YouTube channel. Get familiar with it. But it is one of the more popular ways of acquiring non-KYC Bitcoin. All right. Another quasi way, I say there's what I call a quasi form of non-KYC Bitcoin, and that is where you're purchasing Bitcoin via credit card. So, this is things like Exodus. Okay. So Exodus wallet is a non-custodial wallet. It is a believe it's a non-KYC exchange still. And now you can purchase Bitcoin through Apple Pay, Google Pay, your credit card, or what have you. Now, this is why I consider that quasi non-KYC, because the credit card has you attached to it, but it doesn't specifically say it's for Bitcoin. It's just a charge on it, right? It could be for any financial service. So it's quasi. It's not like, oh, wow, we know you bought Bitcoin with this charge here. Not necessarily. All right. So that sort of falls, credit card purchases of Bitcoin sort of falls in between. There are voucher services as well, where you just buy a voucher with your credit card. And so the credit card statement shows you just bought a voucher. Like what you use the voucher for to purchase Bitcoin is not really recorded. Now, again, guys, some of you might feel that this is sketchy. It is not sketchy to want privacy. Privacy is not a crime. It is a human right. You don't sleep or get intimate with your significant other with the doors to your house wide open, every window open, every shade up, and all the lights bright as hell. Do you? Do you do that? You freaking, some of you kinky mofos do that, don't you? Well, most people don't do that shit. And so what is that? Well, what do you have to hide? Why are you closing the curtains? Why are you locking the door? Why can't we see what you're doing in your bedroom? That's freaking ridiculous, right? You have a right to not let people see your most intimate things. And I'm willing to say that your purchases are just as intimate as your sexual life and its preferences. In fact, it's more intimate. I can know more about you through your purchases than I can about your choice of significant other. Now, your choice of significant other does reveal a lot about you. Don't get me wrong, but I can learn more about you by just looking at 2 or 3 months of your fucking credit card statement. All right. This is not cool. Privacy is not a crime. And we cannot afford to normalize this idea that we're criminals just because we don't want peeping Toms peeping into our freaking private lives, watching everything we do in our homes. So, no, this is not sketchy. It is not illegal to say, I want some Bitcoin that just doesn't have my name associated with it, because these firms are getting hacked every single hour on the day. These firms have my information on the black market for sale. They know on the black market where I live. They know I have an account at Coinbase. All right. They know how long I've had the account at Coinbase. They know where I bank. They know my email. They know my address. They know my telephone number. This becomes a personal security concern for me. When Bitcoin goes to $1 million, you don't think some of these bozo criminals out there are going to buy this data on the black market to find out and sort it by who has an account at Coinbase in this area for the longest period of time, because that's going to assume that you've been stacking for a long fucking time. That's dangerous. Guys, we all have an X on our back. Do you understand? When Bitcoin becomes the most valuable thing on earth this cycle, I believe, outside of gold, Bitcoin's going to become the most valuable item on earth. You don't think that's going to increase the desire by some to take it from you by orders of magnitude? The most valuable thing on earth? You don't think so? You don't think there's a value in not having information attached, your personal identity attached to your Bitcoin? That's a safety concern. You have every right to want to protect your life. So don't let anyone fool you. This is the furthest thing from illegal. All right? I wouldn't be talking about it on a public forum if I believed that. Now, with that rant out of the way, right? Let me pick up where I left off. So you've got BISC as the most popular decentralized exchange. Find out on BTC Sessions how that works. Then you've got credit card purchases through certain exchanges that don't require that you give your personal identity, but you are purchasing it with your credit card, which in a way is giving up your identity. But it's not specifically stated that you're using your credit card specifically for BTC. That's quasi. And then you have the voucher services out there, right? That you buy a voucher, and then with the voucher, you buy Bitcoin. All right. That is a little closer to Still in the quasi category, but a little bit closer to not being so quasi. All right. Another popular way of getting non-KYC Bitcoin is just to demand Bitcoin for personal services. Guys, you're a plumber. Every now and then, sometimes you say, look, I'll give you a 10% discount if you pay in cash. Well, your cash as a Bitcoiner is Bitcoin. I say, dude, listen, it's a big job. I'll give you 10% off the big job. Just pay me in Bitcoin. If you don't have it, I'll teach you how to get it and you just send it to me. Non-KYC Bitcoin for you. I've done this. I've gone out to dinner, a $4,000 dinner with a group, wine and everything flowing or whatever. Boom, $4,000 bill. We're supposed to go Dutch. Each couple's supposed to go Dutch or something like that. Fine. I say, look, why don't we do this? I'll pay the whole bill. That's me getting rid of the fiat, right? You guys give me your part in Bitcoin. Oliver, I may need to do that tomorrow. No problem. Boom, here's my wallet. All right. Boom, non-KYC Bitcoin. All right. You're doing a favor for somebody. You're cutting their grass. You cut your neighbor's grass because her grandson didn't come this weekend. And you want to do, and she wants your 18-year-old son to help her with this, or even you. All right. And she's willing to throw you a few dollars for it. So listen, pay me in Bitcoin. Demand in Bitcoin for personal things. It adds up, guys. It adds up. And so my only purpose in telling you this is to really make you aware of these two markets and aware of the need to have them both, to play in them both. And more important, just as important, I want to let you know that Bitcoin is more scarce in the non-KYC market today. I have never had this issue like this. I can't buy with the size that I have been buying for 4 years in that market. It is simply not there. Do you understand? These purchases that I show you publicly, that's KYC. I'm talking non-KYC. I can't find my size now. It's just not there. And I think that speaks a higher truth than these KYC exchanges are communicating. It is far more scarce than you think, guys. And so just even for that, keeping your finger on the pulse of Bitcoin's real market, non-KYC, gives you deeper insight than looking at the not as real one through the eyes of the regulated exchanges. All right. Yeah, the good old days, carrying cash and meet up to exchange BTC. Yeah, I would not recommend doing that. No, I've heard some horror stories, guys. No meeting anybody in an alleyway with a bag of cash, please. But Oliver, what about a public space? I wouldn't do it. Nope, not me. Well, not with the sizes that I deal with. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it. Yeah. All right. How do you know it's real BTC or not? Well, that's the beautiful thing. There's no such thing as fake Bitcoin. There's fake gold. There's fake dollars. But there's no such thing as fake Bitcoin. That Bitcoin hits your wallet. That's fucking real as real. You understand? There's no counterfeit Bitcoin. Zero. There's counterfeit everything else in the world. Diamonds, everything. Gold, silver. There's no freaking fake Bitcoin. That Bitcoin hits your wallet. That checksum goes through. Boom. Just look up just look up that You know, every transaction or most transactions have a checksum, called a checksum to verify if the address is correct. Boom, if that checksum takes place and your wallet receives, boom, that Bitcoin, you don't ever have to doubt if that's real or not. Ever. It's impossible. There is no fake Bitcoin. All right. The other thing is, guys, this idea that there is possibly could be fake Bitcoin stems from somewhat of a lack of understanding of Bitcoin, right? Because there's this notion that Bitcoin somehow leaves the Bitcoin protocol. Bitcoin started out with 21 million Bitcoin, a little tiny bit less, but we're going to round it 21 million Bitcoin. It started out that way. It will forever be 21 million Bitcoin. See, it's not becoming 21 million. It started with 21 million. The code has 21 million right from day one. It started there. Its release rate allows the existing 21 to come into existence at a certain rate, but the 21 already exists. It's sort of like a sneaker company. You know, we've got a limited run of these sneakers. Yeah, right. Huh. All right. And then, like, you know, we're only there's 1,000 pair of this limited run, 1,000 pair maximum, and we're only releasing 100 of them right now. Yeah, right. If that shit goes fast enough, man, they'll print an extra 1,000 and nobody's going to know. But you can't do that with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin can't ever be more than 21 million. So where does the counterfeit come in with that? Counterfeit would have to be beyond 21 because the 21 million's already accounted for. So think of every Bitcoin being known from day one. Every Satoshi's known. So only known Bitcoin can move. And it never leaves its protocol. It just moves from, it doesn't even really fucking move. It's just that identities, Bitcoin identities, like addresses, are just assigned to it. Different ones are assigned to it, but it never really leaves. So in order to have counterfeit, you'd have to create Bitcoin that's not part of the 21. And that's just not possible. Not even a little bit possible. So this is the only asset that human beings have ever come in contact with that can't be duplicated, can't be inflated away, can't be debased, can't be touched, manipulated, controlled, stolen, confiscated by a human being, group, organization, big tech company, or nation state. That's fucking crazy. What? First of all, it's the only thing on planet Earth that hires human beings to work for it. It pays human beings. That's crazy. That's enough to sit down and just get your mind blown one night. Just pondering that. Wait a minute, this shit is like a freaking alien thing that pays human beings? Well, who's running it? No human being is running it? And it pays human beings? What? Are you serious? And it's never down. It never stops. It's running 24/7. Like the air is working 24/7 and no one can stop air from working like that? Yes, like that. It's crazy. Blow your mind, man. Tell the feds to smoke on that. That's right. Let's see here. Should our non-KYC wallet need to be isolated from the KYC wallet? For example, if we send some sats from, yes, this is a good question. If we send some sats from the KYC to the non-KYC wallet, that means it's now compromised? Yes. So guys, you know, the easiest thing to do is to have completely separate wallets, if you will, for KYC and non-KYC. It's not necessary, but it's the easiest thing. Because if you mix what Roman is saying. If you mix non-KYC Bitcoin with your KYC, it now becomes KYC Bitcoin, right? You've just mixed it with the Bitcoin that is in the same address as KYC Bitcoin. So naturally, that's now yours. And so chain analysis can reveal that, okay, all right, this Bitcoin is this person's because this Bitcoin is his. And now it's joined together with this Bitcoin that didn't have an identity associated with it. So now it does have the identity associated with it. You just made non-KYC Bitcoin KYC Bitcoin. So you want to keep them separate. And all wallets that allow you to label each transaction is very good. So you want wallets that give you the ability to label so that you can make a note on the transaction where this came from. This came from, my friend John at dinner. It's non-KYC Bitcoin. Okay. And so that's good too, just labeling your transactions. And the easiest thing is just to have a separate wallet. You can have a hot wallet for your non-KYC until it gets to a certain amount and then move it to, a cold storage. You can do that. It's safe enough for smaller amounts like that. Stack it up a little bit, boom, then move it to a slightly more secure scenario that's not connected to the internet in any way. But yeah, okay. Biggest mistake I made at the beginning was to mix KYC and non-KYC while consolidating UTXOs. Yeah, you just tainted them all. So you basically had no non-KYC Bitcoin anymore. I get it. Yeah. I've heard of RoboSats for non-KYC. So I'm not familiar with it, but I have heard of it. Yes. Okay. I don't know what this means. I doubt Wire X BTC2. I'm not sure what that means. Wires to someone else's account for Bitcoin can be in that quasi non-KYC Bitcoin category, because what's the wire for? It's not specifically stated and doesn't necessarily need to be specifically stated. You understand? Like that wire could be for anything. Quasi, the wire itself is associated with your identity, but what it's for is not associated with your identity. Yeah. What is this here? If our world increased physical energy and proof of work versus proof of stake, a lot of things we don't like would disappear. Let me see if I can understand this here. Increased physical energy and proof of work versus, yes, proof of stake. Like the current system that we operate on now, that really fucked up system, that's a proof of stake system, right? We work on a proof of stake system. So he who has the most rules, controls. He who has the most gold rules. You've heard of that. He who has the biggest guns dominates. The biggest army, the biggest military, the biggest this, the biggest that, the biggest stake, the biggest money, the biggest wealth, the biggest political power, the biggest, that's proof of stake. The bigger, the more. Bitcoin does not work off that. You see, there's a group of people, or I think there's two of them, right? People going around, I think, today, and they're really becoming popular with this narrative that Bitcoin has been co-opted. And it's starting to fucking piss me off, to be honest with you. And I'm perplexed as to why people continue to give this narrative airtime on their channels and shit. You guys know who I'm talking about, right? Anyway, this idea that Bitcoin's been co-opted is a glaring sign to me that whoever's spewing that nonsense doesn't really truly understand Bitcoin. And they assume Bitcoin operates the same way the traditional system does, when it is the antithesis of the existing system. It is literally the mirror opposite of the system. One is proof of work, one is proof of stake. The mere opposite. One doesn't require, one doesn't give one iota of extra power to a person for the size of their stake. Bitcoin, you have the same rights as Michael Saylor, as MicroStrategy, as fucking BlackRock. BlackRock has not one single iota of extra power over me or you. That's proof of work. Now, if it were proof of stake, that BlackRock stake is bigger than mine, and therefore his power is more than mine. That's proof of stake. Bitcoin's not that. You could own 20 million of the 21 and we would be equal. And I would own one Satoshi, and you could own 20 million Bitcoin, and I could own one Satoshi, and I still have the same rights as you. Proof of work. But in a proof of stake system, you got 20 million of the 21 and I got one Satoshi, I'm a nobody. And we're done with that bullshit, right? All right. So this idea that Bitcoin is co-opted is still operating off the erroneous notion that it's a proof of stake system. It's not. It can't be co-opted. How can it be? Where do you go to co-opt it? Where's the headquarters? What's the group running it? Where's the headquarters? What's the website? Marketing department? The accounting organization that keeps the books? Where the fuck do you go to co-opt it? There's no place, there's no person, there's no anything. You can't co-opt it. How is my Bitcoin in cold storage co-opted? This is asinine. How is your Bitcoin, which is 12 words, how do you co-opt 12 words? How? 24 words. Maybe yours is 24. How do you co-opt that? Tell me. Somebody tell me. What am I missing? What am I missing from these bozos? Is there something I'm missing? You guys know who I'm talking about. They're getting a lot of airplay. Bitcoin's co-opted by the institutions now and the BlackRocks, this and that. Bullshit. My Bitcoin, I can verify my Bitcoin hasn't been fucking co-opted, not even one iota. The fuck are you talking about? Your Bitcoin hasn't been co-opted. My 12 words are still my 12 words. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Don't get it. I think if you separate UTXOs, well, Bitcoin is UTXOs. Your Bitcoin is really what's unspent. It's unspent transaction outputs, right? So think of UTXOs as just a little individual amounts, little bits of Bitcoin, like the stash of cash in your pocket. You got several $100 bills. You've got a couple of 20s. You've got 2 50s. You've got a few 10s and some 5s and some 1s. And each one of those bills is a UTXO, like that. So you want to keep the UTXOs that are, which is another way of saying the Bitcoin that's non-KYC, the UTXOs that are non-KYC, separate from the Bitcoin UTXOs, or the Bitcoin, because UTXOs are nothing more than Bitcoin, that the KYC Bitcoin separate, that's all. All right, so absolutely. Bitcoin is so perfect that I started to believe that the possibility of someone coming from the future or some alien would come here to discover it, maybe that's not zero. What if, so it's so perfect that an alien race would want it? Maybe. But I'll do you one better. What if it came from an alien race? What if it was just dropped on us? I mean, it wouldn't be the first thing that nobody knows how it got here, right? I just find it crazy. Guys, who can truly hide today? Who? Nobody. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto was a blogger, for Christ's sakes, and you can't find him? Like, not a single person, not a single human being, not a single piece, shred of information in today's world. And he was a blogger. He signed up for freaking services, and you can't find a single thing on this. Like, how is that fucking possible? It's not possible. So just maybe wasn't human. I don't know. It's wild, man. Wild. The dude was blogging all day long on the threads. It's crazy. Can't find this dude. Yeah, this is getting into. I think Gen X BTC is getting into topics that are more associated with UTXO management. Yeah, so UTXO management, guys, is very important, especially as you're starting to stack and build your stack. You do want to manage your UTXOs. You don't want them too little. You don't want them too big, because that leaks privacy when you have to move them around, right? Or spend them in some way. You might have to do that in the future, and it'll leak too much privacy. It'll leak how much you have. If you got this big giant UTXO and you only need a little bit of it, and you transact with the big one and get change back. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a UTXO that is worth in USD denominated terms $1 million, but you need 50,000 of it. But this is you got this big $1 million UTXO, right? It's the only one you have, let's say. And you got to do something with 50,000. So you take this UTXO, you send 50,000. Now the protocol is going to take the whole UTXO, split it, send the 50,000 where you want, redirect the 40,000 back to you in the form of change, just like a cashier would do. All right. 50,000 in the drawer, 40,000 goes back to you, right? And change. But that person that received the 50,000 will see the change and say, this mofo had $1 million UTXO. Where does he live? Let's pay him a visit. Damn. So you don't want them too big. You don't want them too small, because if the fees go higher over time, and I believe that's going to be the case, you can have a UTXO that is below the miner fee, and it's what's called Bitcoin dust. So it's useless. Like, you're not going to pay $40 to move $2. I got to move this $2 UTXO, but it cost me $40. That's not going to happen. You're not going to pay $40 to move $2. It's stupid. So you're just going to say, well, forget the $2. So you don't want your UTXOs too small. You want to make them fee proof in the future, but you don't want to make them too big where it leaks privacy if you ever have to chip off a piece of one. So what I teach my Bitcoin is a general idea is, right now, 1 million Satoshis, but I say, to be on the safe side, 2 million. But okay, 1 million Satoshis is the smallest UTXO you probably want right now. 1 million Satoshis. So this means that you can accumulate Bitcoin until you get to 1 million Satoshis and then move it to cold storage. Or you can move smaller amounts and then join UTXOs later to consolidate them to be a bigger UTXO that's more than 1 million. So there's two ways to do it. And then on the other side, don't have a UTXO that's greater than half a Bitcoin right now. So you might have to chop some UTXOs up if you got like a 5 Bitcoin UTXO. Now, that might not be a serious problem if this is for really long-term Bitcoin, but still, you got to start thinking about these things. The same way you wouldn't want a $2 million bill. And what are you going to do with that? A $2 million bill? You know, you might need 100,000, but the person giving you change is going to know, dude, he's got $1.9 million on him. You don't want that. So in the same way, you don't want a UTXO like that. So no bigger than half a Bitcoin UTXO, no smaller than 1,000,000 Satoshi UTXO. And then have UTXOs different sizes in between 1.5 million. Just like I want some 5s, I want some 10s, I want some 20s, I want some 50s. You understand what I'm saying? Have different bills. Tell me you understand this. Just if somebody say, yes, Oliver, we get it. Different size UTXOs between 1 million and half a Bitcoin. Just somebody tell me this is good. You understand? Just tell me. Yes? I know we're on a delay here, but I just want to see yes, though. Got it. Boom. Yeah, I think that the best thing, guys, even me, I just don't want to have to think about it. Non-KYC here, KYC there. Boom. Easy. Now I don't have to think about it. For sure. I agree with this. JR Trades, I agree. All right, guys. That's right. Every 2016 blocks, man. TikTok next block. Yeah. So guys, yeah, don't let these FUD-based narratives, these people engagement farming, looking for follows, and you know, these people who are around promoting this idea that Bitcoin has been co-opted, when it becomes obvious that it hasn't, they just disappear because their entire identities get so entrenched and attached to that narrative that when that narrative breaks, and Bitcoin breaks all of your narratives eventually, when that narrative breaks, their identity itself breaks. And that's why you see people that basically, many people never come back because their identity is broken. They assigned their identity to this one item, this one talking point, this one narrative, and they got popular. So they were forced to defend it when it became clear, when it becoming more and more clear that your narrative is wrong, buddy. And they still have to dig in and double. You know, some of them have ponytails and shit, and just tie that ponytail to a narrative, and you know, they gotta constantly be attached to the narrative no matter what's going on. You don't want to do that. Another thing I realize about these bozos, man, is when, you know, beware of someone who's set themselves up to have to talk about Bitcoin every day. Now, I know sometimes I will get on here every day for 2 or 3 days straight. Do you understand what I'm saying? I know this, but I'm not talking about that. I'm not obligated. I don't have a time where every day I'm on live at 2. This is my channel rules, and this is my business. And I've got to talk about Bitcoin every day. I got to find something to talk about Bitcoin every day at 2 p.m. Beware of people this way. They can be very intelligent people. They can be engaging. You might be able to learn a few things from them as well. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that anyone who has to find something of value to say every day is going to lead you wrong, and increasingly so as time goes on. Do you know what? Why? Because there's not something valuable to say every fucking day. We don't live in a world, as a matter of fact, most days nothing's valuable to say. But they got to make it seem like it's valuable to keep you engaged. That leads to bad shit, man. You know, someone who's locked into a schedule that has, and then you'll see over their history, you'll start to see that the titles of their little YouTube videos get stronger and more FUD-like and more clickbaity because they've got to, it's sort of like the US debt market. Like it just has to feed on itself and the debt just has to keep getting bigger. They just have to keep the interest higher and higher and higher and higher because there's not anything new to talk about every day. I mean, in reality, Bitcoin has something important to talk about once every fucking 4 years. The halving. Like, what's between the halvings? Everything else is bullshit. Oh, well, this government, bullshit. Well, this ETF, bullshit. Oliver said bullshit too. Having to having to having to have. That's it. There's nothing to really talk about. Now, that's different from educating people about Bitcoin. What I'm saying is finding something new to say about the environment, about this, about that. And you start to get really, the person has to start to get really creative. What the fuck do I say today? To make them come and be interested. And that just shit grows and grows and grows. And it just starts to get ridiculous. And the person inevitably runs into trouble with that. There's not shit to say. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Back in the late 1990s, everyone in my world, we knew that we regarded Jim Cramer as basically a buffoon. He was a guaranteed fade, what we called a fade, right? So if this is back in the late 1990s. Now, if Jim Cramer came out with something, you knew that there would be a pop in what he said first, and then you would short the pop for the collapse, because almost inevitably, whatever he talked about just shit the bed. But at first, it would be that pop by the retailers and the followers. You know, Jim Cramer's on TV. And we would just slam them every single time. It was one of the freest money tactics around in the late 1990s. And what a lot of people don't know is that he actually took over from the first Jim Cramer. I think I did write a thread on this. I'll repost the thread. But there was someone else that was the first Jim Cramer, and he took over the role of the first Jim Cramer. He became a second Jim Cramer. Jim Cramer is version 2 of this, because we used to fade the other guy bigger, actually. And this network called the FNN network in the 90s became CNBC. It was first the FNN network, the Financial News Network. The Financial News Network had Jim Cramer 101, old dude, scruffy. But my God, he was popular. And whatever he spoke out of his mouth, man, traders all over would be zeroed in on that to basically go the other way, because whatever he mentioned popped and then would collapse. Well, when FNN became CNBC, a new character came in and replaced this other character because he got in trouble. And the character that replaced the version 1, version 2 was the Jim Cramer we know. We just start fading his ass too. You know, these guys ultimately become really bad because they're locked into having to entertain you every day. And let me just tell you a secret. In financial markets, there's rarely something important to talk about. Most people think there's something to talk about important every day. It's just the opposite. Most days, there's nothing to talk about that's really important. Of course, these networks have to make it seem like it's important, but it's really not. So when you lock yourself into that, you ultimately will become bad, because you have to talk bullshit. And every now and then it's important. And I always refuse to go down that path. I never played that game. You're not going to lock me into talking to you. I talk to you when I want to talk to you. Oh, it's my time, 2 o'clock. I'm not going to do that, man. Not me, buddy. Not me. All right. Crazy, man. Go to my, you should go to my page and just, I don't know if you guys can do this. Can you search on my page, Jim Cramer? Go to my profile and search Jim Cramer. You'll find that thread that I wrote on uh, the two versions of Jim Cramer. Guys, I go back a long way. I'm one of the OGs in the trading space, man. 1986. So these guys know too. They know. I don't even know how to search it here on the desktop, but anyway, yeah, just go to my page and if you can do a search and just search Jim Cramer, you'll see the various threads I've done on this. It's pretty hilarious. Where should I keep my Bitcoin wallet? Now, you know, guys, we have sort of erroneously assigned these traditional financial terms like wallet and things of that nature to Bitcoin when in truth, it's really almost an injustice. And it causes a lot of confusion. It does have some small benefits to, because most people in the world understand what a wallet is, but these things really don't apply in the Bitcoin world. All right. So when you say wallet, Miguel, what does that mean? Like, are you talking about your cold storage device, your signing device? Is that what you mean by a wallet? I don't know. Do you mean your address that you receive Bitcoin to, your public address that you receive Bitcoin to? Is that what you mean by wallet? Like, so you see how it gets a little confusing, right? So you have to clarify, if you're talking about your the proper term is your signing device, right? The device that you use to sign Bitcoin transactions with, a Trezor, a cold card, a passport, a foundation's passport, whatever. If you're talking about that, you need to keep that in a secure place. And that should not be kept with your seed phrase. So your seed phrase, you've got in a single sig Bitcoin setup, you've got three things to secure. I would say you want to, well, maybe even four, but you want to secure the device. All right. You want to secure a copy of the seed phrase, preferably on steel or titanium or something like that, right? And it's not a bad idea to have two copies in two different locations, although some people disagree with me with that. But in jurisdictional, and you don't want your signing device to be sitting there with the seed phrase. That's just stupid. All right. And preferably you want them in two different locations. So you diversify the locations. And you want to make sure that between locations is a security checkpoint. So between where you have your signing device and where you have your seed phrase, there's a police station or the crossing of a human manned bridge or a plane flight or a train or a long Uber ride, whatever. But you want some type of security checkpoint between your two locations. Now, I'm thinking way in the future, but I think these things are going to become increasingly important for security reasons. And so you want to make it where we're not talking about the Bitcoin that you're going to be using to buy coffee in a donut shop and you want to reward the person for being bold enough to put a Bitcoin sign in the window that she accepts Bitcoin. And you're like, let me throw out some Satoshis, man. Fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your wealth. You don't want that setup messed up. You understand? I heard this story of a woman, speaking of plumbers, right? I heard the story of a woman who had a problem with her bathroom sink. She hired this plumber and forgot that she just had her 24 words thrown in a drawer in the bathroom where this plumber is working under in the pipes right by the drawer. And I guess he opened the drawer and saw words. And this plumber knew what those words were. By the time she realized that her Bitcoin was gone, it was long after this plumber job, but she narrowed it down to, this is the only person that's been in my bathroom. And of course, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Words for what? What? Bitcoin? What's that? You know? So you want to be smart about this, guys. You know, and I don't want to hear, I'm going to end on this, guys. I don't want to hear, but Oliver, self-custody is hard. I just rather have Coinbase take care of it for me. No. You know what's hard? IKEA furniture is hard. Have you ever tried to put one of those shits together? Have you seen the fucking directions for an IKEA piece of fucking furniture? Like, that shit's complex. Guys, I'm a dad. I have a lot of kids. I'm proud of that, by the way. Always wanted 10, all right? Since a little boy, because I was an only child, so I always wanted a lot of kids. Anyway, I have spent many a Christmas morning right by the Christmas tree putting together doll houses with a 2,500 pieces. Why do they make that shit like that? My son's Hot Wheels set. You know, it's like you have to be a friggin' engineer to put that shit. That's difficult. 12 words? Come on, give me a break. You keep the keys to your car safe. You keep the keys to your house. You keep the code to your home safe safe. You can keep 12 words. Man up, woman up, stop being a freaking baby, and let's get to it. All right? Let's get into it. No excuses, man. I don't want to hear that nonsense. All right, guys, that's it for today. Bitcoin is scarcer than these centralized exchanges are displaying. I can't get non-KYC Bitcoin in size now. And it's fucking bothering me. It's scarcer than you think. And if you ever want to sell, if any of you bozos ever want to sell your Bitcoin, I'm telling you that my DMs are open to you. You will be the most welcome DM I ever get. Do you understand? Anyone. There's 1,500 people here today, right now, live. I am speaking to all 1,500 of you. If you ever want to get rid of the scarcest, most valuable thing in the world, come to me. I promise you, I will pay you a premium over any price that you can get on a centralized exchange. So you'll make more. Just come to me. Any of you bozos. I'm going to leave you with that. All right, guys. Don't believe me? Try me. Try me. And I've done it right here. Just try me. All right, guys. Ciao for now. Enjoy the rest of your evening, your early morning. I don't know where you are in the world, but be safe out there. One more trading day left in the week. Be safe out there if you're traders. And you know what to do. Go to work. Stack harder.
My
Ciao.
name is Oliver Velez, and I am your 13%er Bitcoiner. Be safe out there, and until next time. Boom!